Okay, so I'm just gonna do a little post-mortem of the artwork in BikAR. This is just kind of go over the general idea and look of the actual game, to do with the actual color palette and the models I've used in the game. To quickly reiterate before I start, majority of these models were used from a public domain pack by Kinney.nl, a really good modeler. He's got some brilliant free models that he puts out there for anyone to use, commercial or for personal use. Majority of these models I've taken from him, modified slightly to fit my aesthetic a bit more. Apart from that, I built the model for the bike using his own modeling software, Asset Forge, which is brilliant because it's almost like Lego, and it just allows you to build it models a bit more quickly than Maya. Plus, it's under public domain licensing, so you don't need to basically pay any sort of royalties or anything if you wish to publish a game and gain revenue from it. The real thing I tried to stress in BikAR was the color palette. So obviously, it's a real nice range of deserty colors almost. In contrast to this lovely blue. But also, if you've seen a lot of my other advertisements and such for it, there's a lot of usage of pink as well. That's kind of contrast and almost bring in tie in my brand. I make games as well because it's kind of like a chosen colour of mine. So these are some level showcasing of the models in the level. So we've got these different range of obstacles here, which are like the rocks that spawn in front of the player when the player's playing. We've also got these decorative little flowers and such. In the final game, I actually have changed the colours of these plants that are on the floor, just because they it's hard to tell in the gameplay whether you should avoid these or not, when really I'm trying to focus on avoiding objects that are red or this lovely vermilion colour. Other objects are highlighted, such as the gold coins. Obviously, gold's good, pick it up. You collect more of them, you progress more, I guess. The player tried to keep a real nice neutral colour, almost like a really nice nice blue. It contrasts very well to the background and setting the players actually on, and it allows you to see give a bit more visibility to the player. A bit more here, you can see more of the level. So I've got these other rocks which are in the background here. These are supposed to be almost just kind of not placeholders but barriers to show the player in which they can move and hold their bounds, almost like you will go in between these two rocks and you won't hit them whatsoever. I just want to emphasize the clouds and such as well. I tried to keep the clouds really a nice solid block color, just so they stand out a bit more. The aim of the clouds, especially in the AR mode, is to almost block the player's view, and it almost forces the player to look around them, which allows it's like a forced mechanic to make the player use the AR mode in the actual game. You can see a bit more of the obstacles here in this level. So these are one of the canyons I built. Obviously, this level is only a side-on view, so sometimes these would spawn on both sides of the actual pathway, I guess, the player goes down. These canyons have coins on top of them, which the player collects, and the way you basically get up to these is through these green glowing jump ramps, essentially, and you collect coins on the way up. In the future, when this game progresses on a lot more and gets developed a lot more, I'm planning on having different bikes which have different abilities, such as a bike that can specifically jump, which means if one of these platforms doesn't spawn, you can just jump up straight to get one of these, the coins up the top here. But I tried to keep these rocks. These rocks actually comprised of about 6 different assets, and they just end up coming out really nice. I tried to keep them this neutral, mint color almost. It makes them stand out a bit more, and it makes it kind of hints at the players a bit more to them than just, look, it's it's a rock. A little bit further on throughout the level here, you see we've got one of the like the rivers that spawns in the level. If the player hits this river, he'll lose a point essentially. Well, lose some health. However, if the player goes across the nice little bridge in the middle, then you'll sometimes the coin will spawn there, so you can either collect a coin, but you won't lose health if you go over that. There's some more little nice assets here in the background, such as these little fences and more decorative rocks in the background. Here are a couple more cinematic shots of this little showcase level. Gives you a bit more perspective on the height of things and where things are placed. This is a view that shows the collisions on each of the objects in the level. So as you can see, there are these very large spheres over the top of the coins, just because the player needs to be within relative proximity to collect these coins. So this tiny little box will have to overlap with this, so he collects them. You can see all this stack of coins up here that causes massive collisions as well. I've also tried to reduce the collisions on some other blocks, so this block in particular and this one here, just because when they do spawn, they spawn anywhere from size as small as this up to the size of this rock here. So they can spawn up to 3 times the size that they would that they are in this picture here, which means when they do spawn, they're going to have a very tight collision on it. So even if you do for example with this rock here, well, this object here, if this spawned and the player collided with it in any sense, the player could not even touch the mesh and it would end up losing health. So I did that by just tightening up the collisions on them, making them really accurate, which helped out a lot. Some more cinematic shots just so you can see the scale of things. This is a bounds shot to show basically the outside bounds of each object. This is a wireframe mode to show the level as well. It just kind of shows the poly count of everything, such as these objects. You can keep these rocks relatively small poly count just because of how large they are. They don't need much in them. The actual player model itself does have quite a high poly count on it. Just because I try to emphasize the fact that the player can zoom in as far as they want to the level, and if anything, I want the player to be the most visible out of everything. I'll quickly jump over to UE now, just so you can see the working level in action. So you can see what I mean about the poly count on the bike kept it relatively high. Obviously, it's a mobile game, so the poly count probably didn't need to be this large. However, for the sake of this game and the time frame I had to make it, that wasn't too much of an issue. In future, if I was to optimize the game more, I'd probably go in and optimize the mesh and such. Just quickly turn off the mesh collisions just so you can see the level a bit more. And that's the actual final showcase level. So you see what I mean about all these other rocks. All these lovely colours. And even the birds and the clouds in the sky. And that's a little art showcase on BikAR.